The town of North Hempstead's Clark Botanic Garden is celebrating its 50th year as a botanic garden and 30 years as a member of the town's park system. The 12-acre garden, founded in 1969, is dedicated to understanding and appreciating the world's plant life through horticulture, education, and research. So let's go back in time to see how it all got started.
Clark Botanic Garden, as we know it today, has an intriguing history. The property, located in Albertson along the Oyster Bay branch of the Long Island Railroad tracks, began as the private estate of Grenville Clark and his wife, Fanny Dwight Clark, who moved here in the early 1920s. The Clarks were wealthy, but wanted their children to be brought up in a simpler country life out on Long Island. Mr. Clark, a graduate of Harvard Law School, was a Wall Street lawyer and influential advisor to nation's leaders of the day. Mrs. Clark, whom he married in 1909, can be credited with being the garden's designer and horticulturalist. She started in the 1920s with a sandy 10 acres of scrub and grass, bordered by potato and cabbage fields, and transformed it into a garden showplace. She imported boxcars of topsoil and laid out lawns and plantations of trees and shrubs. In the 1930s, the Clark family hired Mary Montford as a cook. The current Clark Botanic Garden gift shop, which was named for her, was the original kitchen where meals were prepared. Mary Montford's granddaughter, Linda Walbaum Nakamura, vividly remembers living on the estate during her early years. Linda's father, August Walbaum, served as caretaker and gardener. Mary Montford lived on the estate until her death in 1981 at the age of 94. As time passed, the Clarks spent less time at their Albertson estate and more time at their other homes, located in New Hampshire and Manhattan. In 1964, Mrs. Clark died in their Albertson home. The 1960s also brought more development surrounding their home, as the fields outside the property filled up with new houses and Albertson became a busy commuter stop on the railroad. The Clarks did not want to see their property plowed under for residential development, apartment houses, or shopping centers. Around this same time, the town's then supervisor, Saul Wackler, was considering using eminent domain to take the property and turn it into a playground for the town. But Mr. Clark approached the supervisor and invited him and a group of town officials to go with him to the Brooklyn Botanical Garden to see what a botanic garden was and what an asset a suburban branch would be to the town. When town officials saw the beautiful garden and talked to its director, they were convinced and dropped the playground proposal, permitting the Brooklyn Botanical Garden's acquisition of the Clark property. In 1966, only months before he died, Mr. Clark made the gift he and his wife had planned. Their home became the Fanny Dwight Clark Memorial Garden of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, accompanied by a small endowment. A board was formed to generate local support and provide guidance to Brooklyn Botanical Garden. Years later, landscape designer Alice Recknagel Iris redesigned the garden by creating ponds, streams, and paths to make it into a real public garden. Under a series of directors, Clark Botanic Garden flourished. Modeled on Brooklyn Botanical Garden's auxiliary, a Clark Garden Women's Auxiliary was formed. By the 1980s, hard times had hit New York City, and the Brooklyn Botanical Garden divested the property, and the town of North Hempstead took over. The acquisition took place in 1989 with a conservation easement, which legally obligates the town to conduct the garden as a botanic garden. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy pummeled Long Island and hit Clark Botanic Garden particularly hard, as the garden lost more than 40 trees, 80% of its beehives and bees, an untold number of shrubs and bushes, along with structural damage to the house, bridges, railings, and fences. The garden remained closed for 6 months. The aftermath looked grim, but since then, under the leadership of Supervisor Judy Bosworth, Parks Commissioner Jill Weber, and the guidance of horticulturalist Bonnie Klein, the garden has become a premier botanical showcase, second to none in the area.
Of course, this is my backyard. I mean, I don't even have to come here. All I have to do is look out the window. And I appreciate every inch of the Clark Garden. I love every inch of it.
In 2016, the garden was named as one of the best botanical gardens in New York by ProFlowers. Clark features a family garden section, 3 connecting ponds, an apiary, a formal rose garden, meditation garden, and a Long Island gold medal garden. Admission is always free. We hope you'll visit us soon.